Hello everyone, this is Surya. In this video, we'll be talking about the Flutter state management. This is a four-part series, and this is the first one. We'll be demonstrating it with a news app. This video will cover most of the app development and some basic state management with just constructors and just one screen in the app. In the next videos, we'll cover more advanced techniques like routing, provider, and the block pattern. Let's jump into it. Let's get started by creating the Flutter project. So we'll be creating an Android X project. So the command for that from the command line would be flutter create -- Android X, and we'll name it as news app. So with this news app, basically we'll be getting like two streams of news. One is like the top headlines, and the other one is like the global news kind of. We'll be using a news API, and there's a lot that you can do with that API, but we are only going to use a simple subset of that. It will just take a few moments for creating the project. So the project has been created. So do ls, so you can see that the project has been created. If we go to this folder, so you can see that all the initial files have been created, but to actually write some code, we need a code editor. So for this project, we'll be using Visual Studio Code. You can use any other editor of your choice, say Atom or the likes. Let's launch that from the command line. Okay, so the Visual Studio Code is now ready, and we are in the main.dart file in the lib folder right here. So if you might have done some Flutter app development before, you might be familiar with this default app, which is the counter app created by the Flutter create command that we launched earlier from the command line. Now we have just the code editor and the default app. To actually look at the app, we need Android emulator. Let's launch that in Android Studio. The code will be better understood when we actually see the app working in the emulator. The Android Studio is also ready, and to actually launch the emulator, we need to go to the Android Virtual Device Manager. So we can launch that by clicking on this particular button. It'll pop up a window listing all the available virtual devices. Because I have used some devices before, I have some listing, but if you're actually new, okay, so there you can see the list of devices that are there. So since I've used it before, you can see that list, but if you're new, you may not find anything there. So you have to add one. As you can see, you have create virtual device button here. So when you click on that, it will launch the list of devices that are available in the store. Try to add one that has the Play Store icon in it, because depending on the features that you might need, maybe not for this project, for future projects maybe, you might want to use a stable version, and the ones with the Play Store icon are the other stable versions. So select one of those, then do the next and follow the steps, and that way you'll be able to add a new virtual device that you can work with. So once that is done and you add it to the device manager, so you can just go to one of the icons and click on the launch button. It might take some time, and once the launch is done, you will have the emulator like this. That completes the setup that we need. We have the code editor and also the emulator. Now what we need is we have to install this app on the emulator. The way that we can do that is by going to the run tab here, launch it with run without debugging. In the debug console, it will start launching the app, and it will take some time. Once the final setup is ready, I'll be back again to start coding. The app has been installed on the Android emulator. As I mentioned before, this is the counter app. By clicking on this button, I'm incrementing the counter. Let's try that. There you go. It's incremented to 1, then 2, 3. So you can keep just doing this. Just for the sake of the first timers and people who are relatively new to Flutter, I just wanted to go over the app briefly, just to be clear about the structure of Flutter app and other things that are kind of the basics. Let's get to the flow. Here we have just a representation of what's going on, and I'll just go over briefly. We have the main method, so that is kind of the starting point for any Flutter application that's written in Dart. And you have the run app that launches the my app. That is a custom widget. So the way widgets can be built in Flutter is you can build your own custom widgets using built-in Flutter widgets as building blocks. Here we have the my app. It's a custom app, custom widget. It inherits status widget, which is also a built-in Flutter widget or class essentially. It has the build method, and the my app, it actually overrides that particular build method to return a widget that's composed of some built-in widgets. That is material app in the my app's case. Similarly, there is another nested custom widget inside my app. It is the my home page. It inherits the stateful widget because it wants to maintain the state of the counter. It also has the build method, and it overrides it to return a bunch of widgets, built-in Flutter widgets. So you can see them here: Scaffold, AppBar, center, column. All of these are widgets. So just to talk about the different two types of widgets at a high level, you can have stateless or a stateful widget. So every time you want to maintain a state, and in response to change in the state, you want the UI to be updated, that's when you use stateful widgets like the my home page that needs to maintain the counter and update the app every time button is pressed. And the other one is stateless widget, which basically whatever state you give to the constructor, a widget is built and that's it. So you won't be able to change it in response to any changes in state. So those are the two types of widgets that you can use typically. All the custom widgets, they are kind of mapped to a bunch of built-in widgets by the Flutter. Those built-in widgets, they are formed into a tree called the widget tree. All the state of the app is maintained in that widget tree. Furthermore, Flutter also has two other trees called element tree and a render object tree. The render object tree has the actual UI elements that get painted on the screen in the viewport, and the element tree kind of does the mapping between the state in the widget tree and the corresponding render objects in the render object tree. We'll only be covering widgets here. We won't be covering the other two trees because typically developers, we deal with the widgets at the high level. That is about the widgets. And just to give an idea of the app state and the events, what's going on inside. When the button is clicked, you have the on-pressed event. With the on-pressed event, we have the callback increment counter. So in the increment counter, we have the set state method, which updates the counter and also triggers the UI repaint event. So essentially, like each time set state is called, counter is incremented and the counter gets updated here in the text widget here. That is basically just to give you an idea of the structure, like what is the starting point, how the widgets can be organized, built using the built-in widgets, and how the events are handled with callbacks and all. So let's try to relate this high-level understanding and internalize it through a look at the code. Here we have the Visual Studio Code. So in the Visual Studio Code, let's go to the code from the top. So here you have the main method. Like I said, it's the starting point. You have the run app and the call to the my app constructor. So it is a class and it inherits stateless widget. And you have the build method that's part of the stateless widget that's overridden in my app. And you have the material app, that is the built-in widget that was shown in the overview. And you also have the theme. So this wasn't discussed during the overview. Theme is essentially the styling for the app. Whatever different kind of styles you can want to apply, like text, color, fonts, etc. This is the app level styling. Whatever you give here, it can be applied across the app, like multiple widgets. So then you have the home page, the nested custom widget in the home attribute. So here the title is passed on to the my home page. So then you have the my home page. It's inheriting the stateful widget, and then you have the state class here. So this is the typical naming convention for the state class, like starting with an underscore, ending with the state word, along with the name of the custom widget. One thing that wasn't discussed was how these two are connected. It's two-way. So the custom widget, it's connected to the state through the create state method call. So you have the state class constructor invoked here. So that's how you connect the custom widget to the state class. And the state class in turn, it's connected to the custom widget by inheriting the typed state class. So the my home page, which is the type of the widget, that's how the state knows like which widget to connect to. Then you have the increment counter, that was the callback set state, which triggers the repaint of the widget when the counter is incremented. Again, you have the build, and then you have the built-in widget tree, scaffold, AppBar. So whatever title was passed in by the my app, that's accessed in the state class with the notation of widget.title. So because the title gets passed on to the custom widget and not directly to the state class is private. Other thing to note is the underscore. It's typically used for signifying something private. So similarly, the counter here is a private variable, so it's starts with an underscore. So that's typically followed in Flutter. So yeah, you have the widget tree here. This is a convention to access it. Widget.title in the state class. Then you have the body, center widget, column, and in the column you have two text widgets which are displayed like in the app, the text and the counter. So then you have the floating action button at the bottom there. So you have the onPressed event and the callback mapped here. That was just a brief introduction to like typical Flutter app structure, the basics like how the widgets are built, how the state is managed with just the data passed around in constructors. So in the next part, I will show you like the basic news app, what it looked like in the end, and we'll take it from there. Okay, this is what the news app will look like in the end. So you'll have different news articles, and these are like the top headlines, and you can just scroll them down. So for better readability and visibility, we have like one item, like in the portrait view. So you can just keep scrolling, and also the app will be responsive or adaptive to the width of the viewport. So let's say now we change the width, put it in the landscape mode. So now you'll have like two items. So as you can see here, so you have two items in two columns. So since the width is more, you can see that there are two items and the font is kind of reduced and the image size. This will be kind of your final app. And this is what it will look like. You basically have two streams of news. So one is the top headlines. That is the default news stream that you'll get when you launch the app. You can also choose the news, which is kind of the generic news. Once it's loaded, you can again scroll down, same format, like image. Then you can have author, published by date here, source, and the title and description. So as you can see, some articles have author, some articles don't. You'll have to deal with missing data, like in the input stream of news. Once you find something interesting, you can just click on it and the article will launch in the browser outside the app. There is also the option of in-app view, like the web view, but we won't be dealing with that in this series. So since it's an emulator, it might take some time to load in the browser. It's almost there. Okay, so it's ready. And you can just scroll down in the browser and read the article. So once you're done, to get back to the app, you can just Click on that button. Okay, so once you close that, you'll be able to get back to the app. Click on that. Once it's loaded, you can resume the scrolling and choose another article to read from. That is pretty much what you'll see. And yeah, speaking of the source for the news, we'll be using News API. So it's a pretty neat API which will provide the source for the data that we need for the news app. Let's look into that. Okay, here this is the landing page for the News API. So newsapi.org. So you'll need to register, then you'll get an API key, which will be kind of the authentication that you need to access the data. So on the landing page itself, you have some sample queries. So since you're not yet registered for the API key, you'll see this default text. So you have two main endpoints, everything, that is kind of the news stream that we have, and the top headlines, which is the other stream that we have in the app. There are a lot of query parameters that we have, but we'll only use a really small subset for the sake of the app. So if you go to the documentation, if you go to the endpoints top headlines, so this is what the response would look like for the query that you have, which is country, US, and the API key. So you have the status, results, articles. So articles, it is an array of objects, JSON objects. So that has the main data that we need. So like the source, name of the source, author, title, description, URL. Like when clicking on it, it's launched in different browser, and the image URL, when what is published, content, and so on. As you can see, you have null values for different fields. So in the app, we'll have logic to handle that missing data. We go to the query parameters itself, different query parameters. You saw country, you can have category, so you can stream news based on the categories, sources, and query words, and so on. So similarly for the everything, you have similar query parameters. So Q, title, sources, domains too, like specific website, bbc.co.uk, and so on. So you have plenty of options, but we'll be using just two simple queries for the two streams. And you also have a third endpoint, sources. That is basically to draw information on different sources that are provided by the News API. So like ABC News and so on. So our app will be dealing with top headlines and everything, those two endpoints, and with simple queries. With that said, let's actually get into the code and start coding up our app. Okay, we have the app installed on the Android emulator. Before we get started with the news app, just wanted to make a quick note that I'll be working with just the Android version of the app and not the iOS version. The iOS version typically uses the Cupertino widgets to get the native look and feel of the iOS app, but I will not be covering that in this series. So we'll have in the Android app, like the material app at the root in the built-in widgets. Then on the screen, we'll have the scaffold, AppBar, and some widgets in the body, just like we discussed in the overview. Let's get started. Firstly, we'll change the name of the app since we're dealing with the news app. So let's change the name, news app, in the main, and accordingly the class name too. So then we have the material app. Let's change the title, news app 2. So with the theme, which is the styling, let's choose the color purple. You can choose any other color of your choice. To get an autocomplete or different colors, you can do the shortcut Control and Space. So it will list different colors, and I'm going to pick purple right there. I'll leave the visual density option, and then my home page, I'll change that to news app widget. So that would be like a default news app page, or let's do news app home. So we won't be having a title that's passed in to the constructor, and let's get rid of the my homepage class. We'll be creating news app home in a separate file. So let's just get rid of all of this code, and let's create a new folder, source folder in the lib. Source, and in the source we'll create the file for the NewsAppHome. So NewsAppHome.dart. So all the code, it's written in Dart, all the Flutter code. So let's import the material Dart. Import. So that's in the Flutter package. It's Flutter material.dart. So it has all the Flutter widgets. So let's create a custom widget. Let's make it stateless for now. NewsAppHome extends stateless widget. Since this is stateless, we won't be having a separate state class, but we still need to override the build method, which has all the built-in widgets and the widget tree essentially. Let's override. So the return type is widget for the build method, takes build context. Oops. And okay, so in the return we need the rest of the widget tree. So in the material app, that is like the root, and then for the screen we need to start with the scaffold, which is the foundation on top of which all the other widgets are built. Let's have scaffold there. Okay, so now to know different properties in the scaffold widget, again you can use shortcut control space. So when you do that, everything will be loaded. So we'll have an AppBar. It's an AppBar widget. Again, options. So typically we'll have actions, title, and so on. So let's get a title. And the title, it's loading. As you can see, it's a widget. So typically a text widget, like it's given here. So let's do a text widget. So in the app bar, again, do a news app. We'll change it later because the idea is to load the specific stream of news. So based on which stream is being loaded, that will essentially be the title for the app bar. So we'll change that later, and we'll change it to stateful widget. But for now, let's keep it at stateless. To format the code, you have another shortcut, Alt, Shift, and F. When you do that, it neatly aligns all the content in the file. We also have the convention of ending with the comma, like here. So as you can see, with the comma, it's taking as the endpoint and then aligning the rest of the content. That is the app bar. We'll also have a body. The body, let's keep it simple to start with. We'll have a center text. For that, we have a center widget. And then the child widget would be the text widget. Let's do in progress. It's just that, no styling for now. Got this our screen or the home page to start with inside the scaffold. So let's import this in main.dart. So import source and then the NewsAppHome.dart. Typically, if you have any error, it is also visible like in the file structure here. So as you can see, the test state is kind of red. So that means there is an error. So as you can see, it's also there in here. I'm going to make a handling of missing static target. So let's take a look at the widget.test.dart. As you can see, the curly red line, so it's indicating there's an error there. Because we changed the name of the app to news app from my app, it's not able to find the my app. So this is like the default file that's created with the Flutter create command. We won't be dealing with the test cases in this series, so we'll essentially comment out the code. But any of the testing, it's typically in the test folder. The package is Flutter test. This is basically for the counter app. So as you can see, pumping widget, it is trying to find a text widget with content 0. Since the counter is initialized to 0, then you do a tap on the add icon, essentially the button, and then it's expecting to find a 1. So that is the test case for the counter app, but we won't be dealing with test cases in this series. Let's comment all of this code in the main. Okay, so also the other shortcut to comment out the code is control and /. So that will comment out whatever content you select in the file. All of this are highlighted here because those are not used in the main. We could comment them out. So that way any problems or warnings are also gone. So let's save it. As you can see, all the errors are gone. Let's try to restart the app and let's see what we have. So as you can see, there is an initial error. Now it's restarting. Okay, so we have the errors gone and the initial app is loaded. So as you can see, we have the news app in the AppBar, the text that we had there, then our centered text in progress. Let's add a side drawer to the scaffold because we want to choose the desired news stream. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code. Okay, let's go to the NewsAppHome again. And yeah, the scaffold can have the side drawer. So let's add that widget there. So we have the drawer property, and there you can have the drawer widget. You can have a child. So what we want is more than one widget, but they all should be wrapped into one as a child of the drawer. So since we want kind of the contents in a column, let's add a column widget. So there you have children, so an array of widgets essentially, so that we can have multiple widgets wrapped into one single widget in the column. We have that. So let's add an AppBar. Just like the AppBar widget we had for the scaffold right there. So you can have one here. Okay, so this is just the widgets. So we just add the widget here. So again, title. Let's go content, pick a news stream. Not doing any styling now. We'll come back to it momentarily. Then to actually give like the names of the streams and some icon, let's use a list style widget. It fits right in with the column and the kind of visual UI that we want. So list style, it can have leading widget, text, title, and a trailing widget. So we want an icon in the leading or at the front essentially. So let's add leading. Check out its widget, the type. So icon start. Let's do the top headlines. So for that we'll do line weight. Okay. So that will be the icon that will be displayed in the list style at the beginning. Then we have the title. That is again a widget. It will be a text widget because we want text there. So top headlines. Okay, so here it has to be a text widget. So that's why you have that red underline, wavy underline. And with that, it should be on. So again, to reformat, do Alt, Shift, and F. So everything is align neatly. And also, if you just hover over some widget, you'll get all the details, like what are the properties, and that we can check out and add content accordingly. So we want another list style. So let's copy and paste, same format. Here the icon for the news, let's do public. So yeah, it's like the globe. So let's add that. I think it's more appropriate for the news. Yeah, also let's add some lines between the tiles. So we can do that with the divider widget. Divider. Divider again at the end. Okay, so if you hover over the divider, you have other properties. Feel free to experiment with it, try it out, and go for the look and feel that you feel is appropriate. Let's save that. So we have the hot reload. It's a pretty cool feature in the Visual Studio Code. As you can see, we have that hamburger icon, like the 3 parallel lines. So that is the side drawer. When you click on it, it should pull up side drawer. Okay, yeah, there you go. So as you can see, we have the AppBar. So pick a new stream, the text that we gave, top headlines, news, and we have those kind of light gray lines separating those two. So those are the divider widgets. This hamburger here, it's kind of redundant. So let's get rid of that. You have an option for the AppBar to get rid of that. Let's have a close button here just to close it, and cancel it if you want to. So if you just click on the side, so to just disappear. Also, we need to add a non-tab action for these list styles. So the idea is to load the appropriate news stream, like top headlines or the news. When you click on them, you need to have an on-tab action for each of those list styles. Let's make those changes and add some styling. Maybe the font could be increased here, made gray. Yeah, so let's work on that next. The drawer, I think it's getting a little big, so why don't we add it in a separate file as a separate widget. So let's create another file for the side drawer. So let's name it side drawer dot. Right, it'll be a stateless widget. So let's import the material.dart file from the Flutter package. Flutter material.dart. And again, let's create the side drawer. Side drawer extends stateless widget. Okay, again we don't have a state class here because it's stateless, so we'll again have to override the build method. Build, again the build context. And here what we want to return is the code that we have in the NewsAppHome drawer. Okay, so let's cut it and paste it here. Okay, no errors. And yeah, also we have to import it in the NewsAppHome. So side drawer, no arguments at this moment. Okay, let's import it. So side drawer, okay, Oops. Okay. Yeah, all the errors are gone now. So side drawer is visible in the NewsAppHome, and we can continue coding in side drawer.bat. Like I said, we can remove the hamburger icon in the AppBar of sidebar. I mean the side drawer. So the option is automatically imply leading. It's a boolean. If you hover over it, you'll be able to see the type. You have the bool. When you set it to false, you won't be seeing that hamburger icon by default. You can do that with any app bar. We just don't want that in the side drawer. Let's do some styling too. Style the text, and yeah, that would be text style. So you can give like the font color, all those things in this text style configuration. So if you do control space again, it will load all the properties of the text style. So as you can see, you have a lot. Background color, so font size, and so on. We just try to increase the font size a little bit. Font size 18 maybe. Let's try that. Similarly for the text in the list style, we will change the styling a little bit. Again, text style. We'll also change the color here. Let's put it with gray. Colors dot gray. You also have different shades of gray. Let's just go with gray. So that is the color. So font size. Let's yeah, it's a double. So let's give it 15. Then font weight. Let's make it bold. So the type for this is font weight. Font weight dot bold. So let's format it. Okay, so same styling in the other list style too. So let's just copy paste it. Yeah, let's try to increase the size of the icon as well. Icon has other properties, so you have the size as well. It's a double. Let's try to make it a little bigger than the font. Let's copy paste that too in the other tile. And also we wanted a close button in the app bar toward the end. We can do that by adding an action in the app bar. We have the actions property. It's an array of widgets. So we'll add an icon button, so where you can have an icon and also an action for that button, like on click or on tap. So let's add icon button. Yeah. Okay, so the properties, you have the icon and on pressed. We'll select the icon widget. Icons dot clear. Yeah, so that is the cross or the close button. So clear on pressed. So for on pressed, what we want is essentially to close the side drawer. So the way different widgets are laid on top of each other in a Flutter app is like a stack. So the stack has a special name navigator. Navigator is the one that maintains these different layers overlaid on top of each other. Essentially points to the top of the stack. So if you want to close something at the top, you just use the pop method to close it. So it will look something like this. Navigator dot of context, current context dot pop. That will be the action on pressing the close button, and also on press it is a method. It takes no arguments and returns a void. We'll use the ES6. It's equivalent to this, having close braces. equivalent to that, having a semicolon and the return. With the JavaScript ES6 notation kind of, you just have this, and you can get rid of the braces, the semicolon, and that is what is implied. And again, to align, Alt Shift and F. Those are the changes that we wanted. Let's see how it looks. Again, it's doing the hot reload. Let's take a look at the emulator. So as you can see, the hamburger icon at the start is gone. We have the cross. Yeah, it looks decent to me. And when you click on that, it's closed. So I think we have the desired functionality. Next, what we want is, based on whatever is clicked, we want to pass on that information, top headlines or the news app widget here. Let's tackle that next. Okay, so because the drawer widget is now child widget for the news app screen, what we want essentially is whatever stream we're selecting, like in the child widget, we want that to be accessible in the parent widget. The way to do that would be by passing in a method from the parent as an argument to the child constructor. That way, whatever variables that are there in the parent widget, they'll be accessible in the child upon the method execution. So we would essentially be passing it by reference. Let's get to the Visual Studio Code, the NewsAppHome. There, let's create a new method. So because we'll be changing the title in the app bar based on the stream that is selected, let's convert this to a stateful widget. The shortcut to refactor the code is Control Shift and R. You see convert to stateful widget, select that. So as you can see, it did the conversion for you, created a separate stateful widget and also the state class. Like I said, the default naming convention underscore and the state. It's pretty neat. It's easy for the developers to whip up the code quickly. Now let's get to the state class. So there will create a method that can be passed on to the side drawer. So let's create a new variable, a string variable. It will be private. We'll start with an underscore. So current stream. So initialize with an empty string. Let's create the method. So it will be void. It won't return anything. It will just set this particular current stream property. So set new stream. We'll take the new stream as input, like whichever tile we select, that particular stream value will be passed into this method. So stream name, so that is passed in, and we just set that as the current stream here. Current stream equals stream name. So we'll now pass in this method as an argument. So we'll have to change the method signature for the constructor inside drawer. So we'll do that. So first, let's pass in the set new stream. Okay, so we can also make it a named argument. What we get in is a function. So we have a function type in dot stream select action. So I draw. So when you give the flower brackets, it also makes the arguments optional. We can add in like the required constraint with the annotation required. And this is a shorter convention to set whatever is passed into stream using the this dot notation. Stream select action. So again, format. One other change that we need to make in NewsAppHome is, because now the signature has changed, we have this input parameter. It's a named argument, so we need to give it that name. When you do control space, that will give the option like the named argument. So you can just select that and pass in the method name. That is one other change you need to make if we have named arguments. If let's say that the side drawer had no flower brackets, but directly the argument, that will be a positional argument. It's not named. Once we get that, we can set that as action for on tap in the list style. So get to on, so on tap. You can see it takes no arguments. Return type is void. The signature actually it's same as that of what we have for the set new stream method. Oh, so we have an input argument. So what we can do is do this and actually make a call to that particular method. So that will be stream select action. So essentially you're creating a wrapper for that particular method to match the expected signature for the on tap function. So what we do is you pass in the string. So you can pass in top headlines, and we can have corresponding logic in NewsAppHome to render that particular string based on what was selected. So similarly, we'll just copy paste this in the other list style too. So we'll just change the input. We'll just give it news. In the news home app, we have to make appropriate changes. And also we have to do a set state, because what we want is change the stream based on the selection. The widget has to be repainted with the updated stream. So for that, we need to call the set state method. So that automatically repaints the widget. So just put it inside this. What we need to do is we have to set this as the title of the app bar. So instead of the hard-coded news app, what we'll have now is the current stream. So depending on what was selected, the app bar should now reflect that change. The hot reload is done. Let's see if this works. Let's get to the emulator next. Okay, so because we haven't selected any stream yet, it is showing the default value, which is an empty string. So let's go to the side drawer. And now let's select top headlines. So now you see you have the top headlines in the app bar. Similarly, when you have news, so you have the news now. So one other change that we need to make is each time we click on any of the streams, it should automatically pop the side drawer, just like the action we have for the close button here. So that way it will just get to news of widget and it will just try to load the news stream. Let's make the change in the callback. In here, what we can do is navigator of context pop. So we can actually put that outside the set state because that's not part of the state change. Alt F again to format it. It's performing the hot reload. Now let's see what happens. Okay, so top headlines, we go to news. So now you see it just pops out and you get to the news app widget. Now that we have the information passing in from side drawer to the news app widget, let's now change the body to actually load some data. Like I said, we'll be using the news API. We actually have to register to get an API key and access the API endpoints to fetch the data. So that could in turn be loaded in our app here. Let's work on that next. Well, we are on the news API homepage. So like I mentioned before, we'll be getting the news input stream through this news API. But before we could access the endpoints and get access to all the data, we need to first register, get an API key. So that would be a way to authenticate yourself and get access to data. So this is the registration form that you have. You need to fill out all the details and submit it. That's when you will get your API key. Once you have that, then you can use that in your app and make HTTP requests to pull data like the GET requests. So let's go to documentation and see the suggested ways of API key usage. So if we go to documentation in the authentication, you can directly use the API in the URL. If we go to the endpoints, As you can see, you can directly use it in the URL, giving it API key, or you can also use it in the request header, which is like the suggested ways, like the 2 and 3 here. So you can have X API key in the HTTP header and give the value as API key, or the authorization HTTP header. So we'll be using X API key because like it is suggested here, it won't be visible in the logs of the request sniffing if anyone else chooses to do that. So it's better to send your API key as part of the header in your request. So let's get to Visual Studio Code. We will add it in a separate file, the API key, like an environment variable kind of. If we go to environment.dat, I created a new file. So in that you can give it as a constant, like string constant. It doesn't have any Flutter widgets or anything, it's just plain dot file. So once you have that, then we can use it in the NewsAppHome widget, since that is the place where we get the feed from the site drawer based on whatever user clicks the particular stream. Accordingly, you can make the GET request to the API and get the news input. So let's create a new method for that. But before that, we also need to add a dot package, HTTP package, to make the API requests. So for that, we need to go to pubspec.yaml. That is the place where we have all the app configuration, different packages or assets. We can add images, fonts, and so on. So this will be the place to add all your dot packages that you need for your app. So here we'll add the HTTP package. So let me show you pub.dev. That's the place where we have all the dot packages. So pub.dev, this is the home page, and you type in HTTP or any of the package name that you're interested in. You type in and you have the HTTP. So the source is dot.dev. It's the official package, has a popularity of 100%, a lot of likes, so looks like a genuine package. So you can click on that, get into the details. So if you go to the installing tab, there you have how to install it. So you need to include this line, which we did in the pubspec.yaml, like it's mentioned here. So once you include this line, you'll see that this command gets executed in the Visual Studio Code, and this is the way to actually use it in the app, like in the code. So you import the package. So if you go to README, that has more description. Here is an example of how to make a post request. So HTTP is imported with an alias here, and then it is used to make the post request. So what we essentially will be doing is a GET request. So if you go to the example tab, that's where you have corresponding sample code for that. So it's just GET, and you give the URL there. So whatever the URL we found for the endpoints, like in here, we can just copy this part and put it in as the URL here, and that's how we can make the GET request and deal with the response, access the data. So we'll also be using dot.convert. That's the package that we can use to convert or decode the JSON object that we get as response, and then use it in the app to display or render different articles. So you also have other links here. It's in the package, API reference. Yeah, you have the same example, I think, for the post and all. If you go back, you also have access to the GitHub repository. So you can go there, take a look at the code, and it's open source, so you can contribute if you're interested. Pub.dev, it's a good place to go check out different dot packages and put your own packages too. Let's get back to Visual Studio Code. When I included HTTP, as you can see in the output, it ran that flutter pub get command, and it installed the package. So let's go back to newsapp_home and let's import HTTP package. Import package HTTP dot. So we'll use an alias as well as HTTP. It's easier to use that way. We'll also import a dot package dot convert that we will need to decode the JSON object that we get as a response for the GET request. And let's create a new method which will make those GET requests and get the corresponding stream. So features are the way to handle asynchronous code in Dot. In JavaScript, that is dealt with promises. So just the name is different, but the mechanism is identical. So what we want is the JSON object being returned once the request is served. So we'll have a map that will be returned as a feature. So map string dynamic. So the map will have string keys and the content can be different. Like it's not just one thing, but depending on what the key is, we have the corresponding value. Just to give you an idea, let's go back to the browser and the API. So just go to the response. So this is the sample response that you might get with the API calls to NewsAPI. So as you can see, the author, it's a string, source, it's again an object. Here total results number. So as you can see, the values are different. It's not just one type, but different types. So to have a more generic type, we have the dynamic as the value for the map. That is with the future. I'll elaborate on that more. Let's give it name get new stream. So this GET request will be made based on the stream, and like I said, we have two endpoints. Let's import the environment.dot as well to get access to the API key. I'm assuming you already have registered and have your own API key. So with that, we'll have access to the news API key, and we can just use that in the code. So those are the two streams that we'll be dealing with, and two endpoints. Just add another one. This case would probably not occur, but just for the sake of completion, let's add a case where the stream doesn't match either of those. And we also need the URL. Let's set the URL here. And with the GET request, we'll be using the HTTP alias. So http.get. So if we hover, you can see that the input is a URL. So typically it's a string, and also you can give the headers. Like since you want to give or pass on the API key as part of the header, we can give it in here. So as you can see, it's a map string key value pair. So we'll be giving that X API key in here. Okay, just make that more clear. Yeah, so pretty much the key that we mentioned here to be given in the header. So yeah, just let's include that. So the URL will be the URL up there, and okay, yeah, so it's in the flower bracket, so it's named attribute, so you can just give it like this, and within the flower bracket that will be the map. you can give the XAPI key and our news API key. Yeah, that one. Okay, so that will be the get request that we'll be making, and as you can see, return is also a feature. So the way to deal with the features of the synchronous code, we can use the async await mechanism, or we can use then method right after the get. So if you go here to dot and control space, that is for the autocomplete and options. So you see then here, so that is another way of accessing the future, like pulling out the value from the future. So here the get, it has a response wrapped in a future. The way to get the response out of the future is by using the then or async await. And what you get as the value here would be the response, as you can see. So then we do some kind of operation with the data that's pulled out and in the function here. So by default it's set to null. We can give in whatever we want. So because we want to pull that out and return that in here as a return value, so let's do the async await mechanism. This is the way you use the .then method, so we won't be using that here. We'll use it in another case soon. I'll show that to you. So we use async await. So async, we give it toward the end of the method signature before the flower bracket, and then the await will be right here. So with async await, it's easy to just blend in with the rest of the code, like the synchronous code we have here. So it's the way of blending in asynchronous code with the synchronous code. So when you do the await, that's also another way to pull out the value out of the future. So what we get here will be the response, essentially. So okay, response. So once you get the get response, we want to return it. Also, we have a warning with the get new stream method. So let's hover over and see what the issue is. So it's complaining about the return type. So it has a future, but it doesn't have a return statement. So let's fix that. So in here, we need to decode the data that we get in the response body. So we're using the Dart convert package. So let's use that. And once it's decoded, that is what we need to return, which would be the map. Let's also print that, just so that we could see it in the console. We can do string interpolation here using the dollar and the braces. So since this whole thing is an expression, we need to have those braces. What we get in the body is the response that was shown earlier in the news API. Let's copy this endpoint code and paste it in the news endpoint. We'll be changing the URL though, so rest of the code would remain the same. So now going back to the browser, let's copy the URL. Until Bitcoin, we won't be using the API in the URL. Right here, change the news. Let's change it to just the news, hence the name news for the string. Remaining code is the same, and also we need a return here. Let's return an empty map that finishes the code for the endpoints to make the API calls to the news API. So now we need to make a call to this particular method, which returns the news stream in a future. Place and the widget to do that would be the FutureBuilder. So you could do without the FutureBuilder too, but with that we have one place where we can do multiple things. So the way asynchronous code works is here we're making a network API call. The request is made to the news API servers and we get the response as a JSON object. In the meantime, the UI has to wait, or the app has to wait until the data is available to be displayed. So to reflect that state, the waiting state, the FutureBuilder gives you access to like the connection state of the future, which you can check and accordingly render the appropriate widget. So we could have a circling loader for the waiting state. Once the data is available, then you can render that in like a list, just like a test. So we'll be using FutureBuilder widget in the build method. So let's go there to the build method, replace this with the FutureBuilder. So it takes a future, so that would be our method. So get news stream, and then we have the builder, the actual build method that creates the widget tree that needs to be returned as the body. If you just hover over it, you have two different arguments. One is the build context and a snapshot. So the snapshot has access to like the state of the future. It is a method that takes those two arguments and returns a widget. So build context here, it's different than the build context of the build method. So you can just give it any name that you feel is sensible. I'll just name it builder context. So news stream snapshot. So now we'll access the snapshot to check the state and accordingly render the appropriate widget. So we'll use an if-else if that structure. So we have access to the connection state. So there it is. We need to check that with the standard type. So when it is waiting, what we want is to render a circular indicator saying that it's loading. As you can see, you have other options too, and you can try them out. So I'll just stick with the default. Let's format it. So that is the waiting state. So what if we have an error? So we have a way to check that too. So when there is an error, let's display a widget with some error message in the app. So again, we'll make that a centered widget. In the child, let's make it a row. We can display an error icon and then some text. So let's have an icon there. For the icon, I want a text in the row. So I have a text widget there. Also, I want some spacing between the icon and the text. So let's give a size box. So that is to add some space. Since we're dealing with row, we have to give some width. Let's say like 5 maybe. You can test it out and give a different value if you like. So the text would be, again, you can style it. You can just give red too, but I'm just choosing it from the theme. You can always come back and change the styling to your liking. So we dealt with the case where there might be some waiting, then an error, else you have the data. Let's do a list view so that all the items are displayed in a list, like in a column. So I think that is more efficient because with the builder, it only builds the list items that are currently in the viewport or close to that viewport. You won't be having the whole list of items always on the widget tree. So it's easier in terms of the space, and I think it's more efficient. So at the builder, you typically use item count and item builder. Those are like the two important properties that you need to render those items in a list. So you have a lot of other properties too, so feel free to try it out. We can also get the data from the snapshot. You have the data there, so you can use. So this data is basically the bigger JSON object that we saw like in the news API response. In that, what we need is the articles, so the key value pairs. So with that, we have access to the list, and in the list we want the length of the list. So let's do the length. That should give the required information to the item count, which is the int. Then we have the item builder. So the method has again the builder context and an index for the item, and then it returns a widget for the list item. So now what we do is we access the particular article with this input article IDX, and then render the image and the title just to make sure that all the data is reaching fine through the API call. So a list style is more appropriate for an item in a list view. So let's go with the list style. It has widgets like leading, title, subtitle, trailing. So what we want here in the leading is the article image. So let's access that. Let's use circle avatar widget. So I think it will be good to display the image like in a circle. So you have a background image in the property, so its type is image provider, and it's also a name property. So let's go with the background image. Because it's going to be rendered over the network or fetched over the network, it will be a network image provider. Then the URL. So this URL would be, let me show you in the browser. It will be pretty much this URL to image. So we'll be using this URL given as part of the response data, and render that in the list style. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code. We have the network image, and then we access the data, the articles, and in the articles one with the particular article IDX, and then in that URL to image. So that should get access to the image URL, and it with semicolon. Let's format it. So you have the leading image, and now we want the title. In the title widget, it will be a text. So here again we access the same article, only now we access the title property. So instead of URL to image, we change it to title. I think the FutureBuilder is pretty much coded up to handle different states, like the waiting state, the progress indicator, error, centered error message, then listview builder for all the data. So let's save this, see what it looks like in the emulator. Okay, so as you can see, I think we have proper data rendering there. So API call is working, we're able to get all the data fine and able to render that in the app. So we're all set for the next step, which is changing this list view to a grid view. There we'll have one card in the portrait mode, and also we'll have adaptive responsive design, where in the landscape mode we'll have two cards with two items displayed. So let's work on that grid view next. Right, so we have the app working with the different streams, and also we have the list view just for the check with the data fetch. So yeah, that is the top headlines. You can see the loading spinner. This error is basically because one of the articles is missing the image URL. So if we go to the news stream, again you have the loading spinner, and you have all the items rendered. So errors here because all the data that we need, the image URL and the title it's there in the articles. So now let's switch the list view to grid view. So let's go to just the Visual Studio Code. Yeah, so we have the FutureBuilder in the NewsAppHome widget. We'll be changing the data render here. Instead of a list, we'll have the grid. So let's create a new file for the grid view. So in the source, new file. So we'll have news grid. So again, it will be a stateless widget. It just gets the data as input, and then it just renders the widgets with that particular data. So there won't essentially be any change in the state. So we'll have it as a stateless widget. Let's import the Flutter package again, the material dot. So we're going to create another custom widget, news grid. So we'll override the fill method again. So instead of the list, we're going to have a grid view here, again with the builder constructor. So like I said, it is efficient that way with the builder constructor. If we just hover, we have a bunch of properties here. We have the item count, item builder, just like in the list view. In addition to that, we will work with the grid delegate. So that essentially has a configuration for the grid, like how many items to be displayed in the viewport, like a single column, more than one column, and the spacing, like column row spacing. So yeah, let's do the item count and item builder first, and then we'll get to the grid delegate. So item count. So we need access to the list of articles here, so we can get that through the constructor. So let's create a constructor. So again, final list dynamic. So because we're getting the value of a JSON map, so it'll be dynamic. So, but we know that in turn that is list of JSON objects. So accordingly, we'll access the data using the keys. Article list. And now we'll get that through the constructor. Yes, grid. So it's required attribute, required named attribute. This dot article list. So that would be the way to get the article list, and then we can use that to get the information on the item count and building the items with the data. And then item builder will be again a method that takes in builder context and int, which is the item index. Let's work with that. It will be just like in the list view. Let's do just the text widget. So what we'll have here is the title from the particular item in the list. So we also have a warning here. So the parameter grid delegate is required. Like I said, that we have to have that grid delegate for the configuration of the grid. So let's get to that finally. So we have grid delegate. So there are different types of grid delegates. So we have sliver grid delegates with fixed and max cross-axis content. So with the fixed cross-axis count, we'll have a fixed number of items in columns. So if we choose the count as like 2, we'll have 2 columns. And the variation is the max cross-axis extent. So in that, what we have is we give some bounds, like how much can the width be, the max width be, and accordingly like depending on the available width space, the number of items will be automatically changed with the viewport. So that is more adaptive, more responsive. So let's go with the max cross-axis extent properties. So we have the max cross-axis extent. So that will have like how much is the max width that they can be for a grid item. And then the main axis spacing, which will be like the column spacing, cross-axis spacing, the number of items in each row, and then the child aspect ratio. Child aspect ratio helps you whether to favor the width or the height of the item. So if it is greater than 1, so it has more width than the height. But if it is less than 1, it favors the height over the width. That will be like the way to tune the item size to your liking. So let's get into that configuration. This is an example. So grid is 500 pixels wide, the viewport. If we give it as 150, the max axis extent, it will create 4 columns, 125. So the max that it can take is 150, but it can be lower than that. And depending on the viewport, it will see how many items it can accommodate in each row. Because we want one item, like single column in the portrait view, we'll go with 400 pixels. So then main axis spacing, so let's go with 10 there, and cross axis spacing, let's go with 15. You can change the spacings depending on what you feel is a good look. So I'm just starting off with 10 and 15 and 400 there. And next is the child aspect ratio. We have the child aspect ratio of 1.7 by 2.45. You have to experiment with this ratio a bit so that you get the right size. That completes the coding with the news grid. Let's go to NewsAppHome. Here we have replaced the list view with the grid view created in newsgrid.dart. We are taking out the data from the snapshot and passing in just the articles to the news grid. Let's see what it looks like in the emulator. What we see right now is kind of a blank screen, but if you scroll down, so you can see that you have some text in there. So you do see that you have a single column and items laid one below another. That is kind of the look we're going for. Let's add more items to the grid item, like the image, author, description, and so on. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code. Here, instead of the center text, we have a grid tile widget as well. That is typically used with the grid view, just like we have a list tile with the list view. Let's start using that instead of the centered widget. Change that to grid tile. So grid tile also has a child widget, so it should work fine. Because we want items in a column, so we'll have a column widget instead, and inside that we'll have the image and all of the content that we need. Let's change that. To refactor the code, the shortcut is Ctrl Shift and R. So when you do that, it will show like different options what you can wrap it with. You can wrap it with the column, then it automatically adds the children property, puts the text inside it in the array. Let me show you kind of the look we're trying to go for with the grid item. This is the layout we're going for with the grid tile. So what we want is a column on a card, starting with an image for the article, and below the image we again have a row inside the outer column. So in the row we have the author and published date again within an inner column, and then followed by the source of the article, and then after the row we have the other two widgets in the column, title and description. So this is the layout we are going for. Let's build that in the grid tile. Since the widget might get big, let's put it in a different file. So in the source, let's create a new file. Let's name the file newsgrid item. So this will also be a stateless widget. Let's import the material.dart from the Flutter package. Then let's create the newsgrid item custom widget. So here let's just copy paste from the news grid widget. So we will have to get the corresponding article entry as input to the grid tile. Let's fix that in the constructor. So we'll need all of those data like the image URL, description, author name, and so on. Accordingly, we'll create the variables for that. So all of this has to be passed in from the news grid widget for each of the articles in the grid. So then we'll use all of the data to have the required layout of the content. The grid tile, all the content in the column should be on top of a card. So let's wrap the column inside the card widget. So to refactor, the shortcut is Control Shift and R. So there we are. We can just do the widget and then name it card. For the title here, we'll just give the title. It's in the final variable right here. So we need to get all of this data through the constructor. Let's do that. We'll have all these as named attributes and all of them are required. So we have this error. As you can see, it's complaining about the initialization of the variables declared as final. So the error will be gone once we have all of these variables in here. So as you can see, the error is gone, and we have all the final variables being initialized here in the constructor. Now let's import this widget in the news grid. Then come in here, and when we return here, we'll pass in all the required information. We do control space, you'll have all the attributes that are listed here. So with article URL, so we'll use the list, and from the list we'll access the appropriate article with the IDX, and in that we'll use URL to image. That is the key that we get is part of the response with the data. So let me go back to the browser so that you're more clear. Okay, we are on the News API homepage again. Basically, the URL to image, URL, all of these values of the title, description, all of this will be passed on to the grid item widget. Yeah, let's get back to the Visual Studio Code now. And now we'll just pass in the rest of the data. Yeah, I think we're passing in all the data from the news grid for each item that is being built here in the gridview builder. And now what we need is go back to the news grid item and then lay out all of the data in the card. First thing, we want an image at the top. So for the image, we'll use circular rect widget. So that is used to clip child object like in a rounded rectangle corners. So let's use that widget, clip our rect. Okay, so clip our rect, if we just hover, we'll see that we have the child property, and then also we have the border radius. So that is what we're going for. You'll have the child as an image. Child, since we're going to get the image over the network, it will be image dot network. So in the network, you can just give the source, which will be the URL, as the positional argument. That is in the property image URL. So let's type that in. And then we have the border radius. It is again border radius. So let's do that. Border radius dot circular. So since we wanted the circular corners for the image clipped at the corners, but what that does is it has that rounded corners on all the four sides of the image. We don't want that. We only want the rounded corner on the top left and the top right. We want the rectangular corners at the bottom. So we have another option. So border radius dot only. So there we can choose specific edges. So if we go to the properties, you can see that you have the top left, top right, and the other two bottom right and left. So we only deal with the top edges. So top left, let's give it a radius of okay, the type is radius. So radius dot circular, and this is a double. So let's give maybe 6. Let's see how it looks, and we can take it from there. And then again, same thing for the top right. So we have the image, then we have the row that we wanted for the author, publish date, and the source. So let's work on the row next. So we have the children there and the array of widgets. So here inside the row we have column again, and in the column again we have the array of widgets. There will have 2 text widgets for the author and also the publish date. Let's do some styling too. Then after the column, we have the source, the other child in the row. That will also be a text widget. So also, since it is in the row, we actually want to favor the column to have a little more space compared to the source, as the content can be a little longer, as you'll see once the data is rendered. So we can use expanded widget for that to allow as much space as possible for the children in the row. And let's add a widget because we don't have expanded listed here. So expanded, and you also have a property called flex. So there you can give priority to the widgets, like based on the space distribution. So if we'll give more space for this column, so by default the value is 1, you can see. So to give it more priority, let's set it 2. That way this column would take up more space compared to the standalone text widget here, the other child in the row. So let's wrap this up and expand it as well. And here we will not set any flex. It will just have the default value of 1. So that is the row. We're done with the sources. Now the title is already set there. Let's give it a style too. And then finally we have the description. I think that's pretty much the layout we wanted. So let's save it. see how the rendering happens on the emulator. Okay, so we seem to have some error. As I said, there seems to be some type mismatch. So it says that the type of the map is not a subtype of string. So if we go to the line that's causing the error in the news grid, so it takes you right here in the source. So the value for the source is actually also a map, and inside the map we have the name of the source. So we need another level of nested access. So I can show that to you in the response of the news API. Let me pull up the browser. Okay, so there we are in the news API. So as you can see, the source here, the value is also another map, so where you have the key value pairs. So what we need to do is have another nested access to the name, which would actually get us the name of the source. So in here we need another level of access with the name, so that should fix it. Another error, data not equal to null. Okay, so let's look at the logs. So it says that it is missing the value for the data. I think it has a null value. So that is one thing that we need to deal with the third-party APIs. There might be some data missing. So we need to have logic to check for null values, and accordingly we need to do some handling in our code. So let's work on that now. So the possible null values would be for the text most of the time. So inside here we can have a check actually. So within the widgets we can use an if, but without the braces. So that is allowed with the dot code. So if we are working with author here, author not equal to null, then render the text widget here. So that is the condition. So similarly we need to have the same condition here, but for different field. So that way the content on the card is rendered only when there is something to display in the article data. Let's just go back to the browser for a second. If you go there, you can see that there is also another field called content. So let's say the description is off, and content would be a good replacement for the description. So let's try to have that programmatically render this or that in the Visual Studio Code. Let's go back. So let's do that at the source, like in the news grid. So if the description is null, what we can do is, so what this operator essentially checks is, try to use the description. If that is null, then use the content. So we'll just change it to content here. So I think we've done the changes. Now let's see if everything is rendered properly. Okay, there you go. So you do have the data being rendered in the emulator. So let me scroll down. Okay, it's just taking time for the images to load. I think we need to work on the size of the card too. So the height is too much. So otherwise the content seems to render correctly. So you have the author here, and this is the title, and then this is the description. So you may not have all the data for all the articles. Okay, so we need to work a little bit on the formatting. Let's give some spacing here, and let's pull these content to like the two corners of the left and the right. Let's work on that. Okay, so let's go to the news grid. So since the ratio is off with the height, let's work on that. So you have to keep trying it out. and see which ratio works. Okay, so this seems more compact, like just the right fit for the content, but there might be some overflows because you cannot really predict the number of characters in the title or the description, or even in the source and the author. So let's see how it is with the other cards. Okay. So one other thing you can see is the height of the image. So it's different in different articles. So it's probably better to have like a consistent height for all the articles. Yeah, let's go to the news grid item. Okay, so here. So let's give some padding to the news grid item. Let's give some spacing between all the content. Some spacing between the image and the row. So we will be using size box. So we give a height, since all of the widgets are in a column. 6. So let's try and copy paste that after the row. So you can see there is an overflow. So here the image size is too big, here the image size is smaller. So it's better to have like some fixed size for all the articles image, and also like the number of characters in the title, description, and the author. So let's work on the sizes next. So here we have the clipper rect. I have the clipper rect, so let's wrap it in a container so that we could give it some height. So wrap it in a container. Let's give it a height of maybe 200, and also width. So width maybe 400 to match the width of the viewport. And also decoration. So in the decoration we can give the shape to the container. So because in clipper rect we have this border radius where the top two corners, the top two corners, they have a rounded border. So we want the same shape for the container too, so that both are aligned. So decoration, we'll do box decoration, and with the box decoration we also have the border radius, so just like we had for the clipper rect. So we could just copy paste that. So we formatted it. Let's give some padding for rest of the content too, like the row and the title. Yeah, in the column, let's have the cross-axis alignment to the start so that the text gets to the start. Also, we want to limit the text, like in the title, description, and the author, so that there isn't any overflow in the card, so which has all the article content, because you can never really predict the size of the content, so it's better to have a limit. So the author, so yeah, let's check the size of the author. So let's say maybe 60 characters for the author. If it's greater than 60, what you could do is you can just get a substring of the author and then append with the ... If it is less than 60 characters, you just give the whole string, which is the author. So similarly, we'll have check on the length of the content for the title and the description, and accordingly limit that. Yeah, I think we have made enough changes to have a decent formatting for the content in the card. So let's save this and pull up the emulator. It's loading. Okay, so I think this spacing and all seems decent to me, and also the size. So as you can see, when there is more content than the given number of characters, we have the dot 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 there. So okay, so it seems decent. Maybe we can reduce the size of the card a little bit. Let's do that. Going back to Visual Studio Code. So go back to News Grid. So there we again can work on the child aspect ratio. Yeah, looks fine to me. The ratio have some spacing. So as you can see, you might not have some content on every article, so we'll just won't display that. So let's try to get the source content to the right corner. Go back to newsgrid item. So because that is the content of the row, let's try main access element to the end. So let's save it. Give me hot reload. Yeah, I think it's gone to the end now. So it looks better. So let's look at the landscape mode now. So all changes we have been doing it for the portrait mode. So let's see what happens in the landscape mode, because we want our app to be responsive or adaptive too. Okay, we're in the landscape mode now. As you can see, now the grid is accommodating two items, like in two columns. So we didn't mention about how many items. It's just in an adaptive way, giving space for another one based on the max width that we set, like the 400 pixels. So if you just scroll down, so as you can see, we have an overflow. So the child aspect ratio that was working for the portrait mode is not working quite well for the landscape mode. There is an overflow here by like 9 point some pixels. What we can try is we can try to reduce the font size a bit, because as you can see, it's trying to accommodate two. So accordingly, we can try and reduce the font size, and also we can have like custom child aspect ratio for the portrait and the landscape mode. So we'll be using the media query to get information on the viewport size, the width essentially, and then accordingly we'll set the different fonts and the child aspect ratio. So let's work on that next. Back to Visual Studio Code. So let's work on making the app adaptive. Let's start with the author. So here we can use media query to also have like a different character length that we can use to display to avoid that overflow. So yeah, let's start there. So that's how you access like the current width of the viewport. So if it is greater than 500, meaning that is the landscape mode. We use the tertiary operator here, the question mark and the colon. So here, when it is in the landscape mode, greater than 500 pixels, let's try maybe 40. So since there is the card is kind of compressed, we have to use like less number of characters and lower font. And let's do the font here. As you can see, we still have the overflow, like 36 pixels now. It's much more than the 9.9 we had previously. Yeah, let's work on the length here too. Also, we want to change the theme here. So we might have to change the child aspect ratio too, and also the size of the image. Let's go to the image. So let's keep the width at 400. So we will have to change the child aspect ratio. Let's go to news grid. Here, let's have a child aspect ratio like 0.7, 0.45. I've tried few different values and that particular ratio seems to be good, like both for the portrait and the landscape. So let's try that. Yeah, so the image and the text seems relatively smaller. Yeah, so there is an overflow of like 5.3 pixels or something. Maybe we can reduce the font size a little bit for the landscape mode. So is it just that one case, or yeah, so the rest seems kind of fine. Go back to the Visual Studio Code, then to the fonts. Okay, so we have to do the length here for different views as well for the description. So let's pull the emulator. So yeah, seems better. We don't seem to have any overflow there. Yes, the images are taking time to load, but as you can see, the sizes are consistent across the articles. Okay, let's go back to the portrait mode to see how it is. Okay, we are in the portrait mode. And yeah, I think it seems fine. It's well spread out, all the content on the card. It's legible. Yeah, I think I'm fine with the view. Let's give some elevation to the card as well. Go back to the Visual Studio Code. So you see with the shadow, it looks a little neater at the bottom. So you can see like where the card ends and the other card starts. Next, let's try to format the date, like the published date, and add it right below the author here. So we need a package for that, internationalization package, INTL. So let's work on that. We are on pub.dev again. So the package I was talking about is INTL. It's for internationalization, like having the date based on some localized formatting. So let's go to the INTL package. It's given by .dev, so it's an official package. So if you go to the installing, that's how you can add it to the pubspec.yaml file. Okay, let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. So let's go to the pubspec.yaml and add it as a dependency here. So one thing to note is each time you update your pubspec.yaml file, you're changing the application configuration, dependencies and all. So you would have to stop the app and you have to rebuild it again from the start, or install it again on the emulator. So only then it will be able to see like all the dependencies and get all the relevant code in. So it's doing a flutter pub get, so it's automatically pulling in that package. So we'll stop the application here. console, as you can see, it's exited, so it's terminating the debug session. So let's get back to the news grid item, and there we can format our publish by date. Going back to the documentation, so this is how you can import the corresponding code in your application package intl.dart. And let's go to readme just to look at an example. So what we need is date formatting and parsing. So since we're dealing with the publish by date, so you have different ways to format this date string in the string format. And for that, let's go here. I think you'll see different patterns for formatting the date. So this is like year, month, and day. So you can have a string here, you can parse it, the string that we have, and then based on the particular format that we choose and the locale, it's US here in US, the corresponding date will be displayed. So here is how it looks like. So if you want to use like the current date, like at this point, so you can use datetime.now format so that it gets to datetime format and use it in here. Let's look at this date format class. So these are all like the different formats that you can have, and we will be going with this particular format. So year, month, and day. So let's go with this documentation. It's might find a few examples similar to what we had on the readme page on pub.dev. So I think here is better description. So the YMMMT, there's, yeah, so year, month, and day. So yeah, like you can spend some time checking out the documentation. I think it's really useful. Whenever you get to a new package, check out the documentation, try it out. So now let's get back to the Visual Studio Code. So let's import the Intl. Okay, let's get to the publish by field. Here it's a string, so what we need is if you go in there, expect something of a date time value, so something with the date time type. So if we go to parse, that's the type that is returned by the parse method. Let's see what happens. So first also we need to reinstall, like do with the run the debugging. So once it's installed, I'll be back again. Okay, the app is now installed. Let's pull up the emulator too. So as you can see in the emulator, you can now see the date formatted, like when was it published. So just scroll down, so you can see different dates. We are in the new stream. So yeah, the formatting seems to work. So next, the final step, that is like when you click on a particular article, what we want is the actual article to be launched in the browser so that you can read through. So this is just like a preview of the news article, and like I mentioned before, there's also a way to do like an in-app view using web view, but we won't be using that here. We will use a package called URL launcher that will help launch a URL in a browser. So we'll have to incorporate an on-tap action, and with that I use URL launcher package to get it in the browser. So let's work on that next. Okay, the app has been installed on the emulator, and as you can see, we're able to display the date as well here in the format, which is more readable. Had to make a change to the input property, like from the news grid in here. Yeah, it had to be published at, but it was given as published by, so that's why we weren't able to see the plain string like in the previous hot reloads. So now we have to work on launching the URL in a browser instance on tap. So for that, we'll use another package. So let's go back to the browser again. Okay, so there we are. The package name is URL launcher. So it's created by the flutter.dev. So you can see it's a popular package, a lot of likes. And the way to install it is again by having this in pubspec.yaml. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code. So in there, in pubspec.yaml, we can give the line URL launcher, the one just copied. Also, let's take out the emulator for now. Let's do the code changes first. So after adding that, the flutter pubget that command also was run by the Visual Studio Code. So we have it installed. However, we have to restart the app again for seeing the changes or the code to work with the URL launcher. So this is what we need to do each time we modify the pubspec.yaml. So once the app is reinstalled again, I'll be back to complete the changes. Okay, the app has been reinstalled on the emulator. So let's go back to the documentation. Let's see like how to include the URL launcher. So this is where to import it. URL launcher. And let's go to the README. So this is an example of how to use the URL launcher. So material.dart URL launcher, and let's say you have like onPressed button event. So onPressed, you can launch the URL in a different browser. So this is the callback. So we have async await here. So since it's going to make a network call, but also launch the browser, so it will take some time and it has to be asynchronous. So you have the URL here. You can also check if the particular platform supports the launch mechanism. Like here it's a URL, and if it does, then you launch the URL. Else you have a way to like throw an error. So these are the URL schemes that are supported: HTTP, HTTPS. This is an example. It also supports like to make a phone call, send an SMS. So that's why you have the can launch method, just to check that the platform supports whatever you're trying to do. Also, the URLs have to be encoded. So let's say you have some spaces or something, you need to have the particular URL encoding characters in there. Yeah, so that's about it. Let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. We are in the newest grid item.dart, so on the grid tile. So because we want the URL to be launched when you tap on a particular article which is on a grid tile, let's wrap it into another widget, Intl. So that gives you a way to capture the gesture, like the tap gesture, and perform some action like on tap. So let's do the code refactoring, Ctrl+Shift+R, then the widget. So let's do inkwell. Another neat effect with inkwell is you have some color displayed like on the tab. So you can give a splash color for that. So the type is color. And let's because we have the primary accent, the primary swatch is the purple for the app. So let's do purple accent color. So once you have this splash color, you also have the events like on tap, what to do. You can give a callback here. So it takes no arguments, returns nothing. So let's give the default method in here. So just to check if the inkwell is working or not. So errors are gone. Okay, just a typo there, purple accent. Okay, so let's pull up the emulator. Let's do a tab. So yeah, there you see you have the purple color like originating from the point of the tab and propagating to the rest of the card. It's kind of underneath the card though. So yeah, so there you go. Just for that neat effect. It also gives a way to capture the gesture. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code. There we can code up the callback. So let's create a new method. So void, let's call it launch article. Doesn't take anything. And now we can import URL launcher. So let's import that. Once we have that, we can use the can launch and launch methods. So let's go in here. So we have the article URL here in this particular variable. We'll just use that as input. So as you can see, there is a wavy red underline under the can launch. So if we go there, it says should have a static type of bool because it's inside an if condition. But since can launch returns a future, what it's having is future bool and not the actual bool. So for that, we need to use the async await, a way to like extract the bool out of the future. So have async there, and then if we do an await, that should work. See, the error is gone now. Okay, so if it can launch, then you do the actual launch. So do the launch now, launch method. So can you pass in the URL? And again, launch actually returns a future. So we need to use an await here as well. So it's actually article URL. So let's have that as the callback now for the on tap. So let's try it out. Okay, the browser seems to be launching. Yeah, have the URL being rendered now. And there we have. So it's loaded the corresponding article in the browser. So you can just scroll through and read the whole article. So yeah, so what you have in the app is pretty much a preview of all the different news articles whose data is rendered from the news API. And yeah, once you launch it in the browser, you can just read it normally. So to go back to the app, just click on the button and just close that, click on that. So you can get back to the app, continue with the scrolling. And once you find something else interesting, you can just tap on it and read the article in the browser. So that is pretty much the app. So because this is the first part of the Flutter state management series, most of it included building the app. And as you might have seen with different classes, we just passed around the data through constructors. So let's go back to the Widget Studio Code. So in the Visual Studio Code, we started with the main, and we just had the home here, which is the NewsAppHome. And that we had the FutureBuilder to get input from the drawer, side drawer, and then accordingly render the news stream. So we're rendering that in a grid. So again, we have a separate a widget for that. So we passed in the article list as an input argument to the constructor. So once the data was passed into the constructor, there again we had a separate widget for each of the grid tile in the grid. So again, a lot of information was passed in through the constructor. So this is like the basic state management that we can have in the Flutter app. Yeah, so in the next part, we'll see routing, where we can have different routes, like in the web you have different URLs. So it's just that we just have one application, but we launch different widgets with different routes. So that way, like here we had the side drawer. So in the side drawer, we had two different streams. So when we do the on pressed, instead of popping, I mean not only popping, but we'll launch the corresponding screen. So we basically have two screens for the two streams. In the part one, we only have one screen. So we'll have, okay, let's go back to the emulator. So we only have one screen here, and yeah, so we have two different streams, but the app only has one screen. So with the routing, what we can do is we can have multiple screens. So that way, like each stream can be managed in its own screen, like starting with the scaffold and body, AppBar, the whole widget tree. So you'll essentially have two screens, two different corresponding widget trees for each of them, and we can manage all like the events and everything within those screens for two streams. So I think that is more modular, easier to maintain, and yeah, that will be like an improvement over this version, where we'll have multiple screens and dedicated management for each stream. So with that, I'll see you guys in the next part, where I'll deal with the routing and incorporate that for better state management. If you found this video useful, click on the like button and consider subscribing to this channel. So one disclosure about our news app is it has been inspired by a project posted by JS Mastery, the YouTube channel. So it's a voice controlled news app with Alan AI. So it's a pretty cool app, a lot of advanced features than what we have in our simple app. So I don't have any affiliation with JS Mastery, just found it on YouTube and thought it's a neat project, and did a version of that in our series here. So yeah, I'll leave some links to resources in the description. So take care and hope to see you in the next one.